What if everything you learned about the discovery of America was a lie? You have heard the story. Columbus sails the ocean blue in 1492 and discovers a brand new world. But what if that wasn't the beginning of the story? What if a different group of explorers made it to the Americas first and no one wants you to know? Today, we're diving into a suppressed chapter of global history. The groundbreaking claims of Ivan van Sertima, a scholar who spent his life exposing one explosive truth. Africans were in America long before Columbus. His evidence, stunning. His theory, controversial. The implications, game-changing. So stay with us, because by the end of this video, you'll question everything you thought you knew about world history. Africans sailed to the Americas centuries before Columbus. In his best-selling book, They Came Before Columbus, Van Sertima dropped a historical bombshell and backed it with a mountain of evidence. But here's the twist. One of the first clues, mysterious rock carvings deep in the American Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, depicting faces with undeniably African features. We're talking wide noses, full lips, and proportions unlike anything in traditional native iconography. Coincidence? Not according to Van Sertima. He believed these carvings weren't just artistic anomalies. They were historical fingerprints left by ancient African voyagers. Now hold on, because it gets even wilder. You've seen the Olmec heads, right? Those giant stone monuments in Mexico. They're over 3,000 years old. Each one weighs several tons and features, again, African characteristics. Critics say, oh, it's just stylized art. But Van Sertima asked the hard question. If these weren't depictions of real people, then why do they all share such specific facial traits that align so closely with West African physiognomy? Still not convinced? Let's talk about Mali. The Mali Empire wasn't just rich, it was a maritime powerhouse. Historical records describe Emperor Abu Bakr II launching a fleet of 200 ships into the Atlantic in the 1300s, never to return. Van Sertima believed these ships didn't vanish, they reached the Americas. And the craziest part? Arab scholars wrote about this. This isn't urban legend, it's documented. But mainstream historians dismissed it. They said, Africans didn't have the ships, they didn't have the navigation skills. Yet other explorers, like Thor Heyerdahl, recreated ancient transatlantic journeys using traditional boats and proved it was absolutely possible. So why has this been erased from history? Because if it's true, it rewrites everything. It means Africa wasn't just reacting to the world, it was shaping it. It means Africans weren't just traded, they were traders. Not just discovered, they were discoverers. Still skeptical? Let's look at the evidence stacking up. Cultural parallels between African and Native American civilizations. Agriculture, metallurgy, textile weaving, spiritual systems. Even some native oral traditions mention black-skinned visitors arriving from the sea, bringing crops and wisdom. These aren't coincidences, they're cultural echoes. Modern science is catching up. New DNA research from indigenous coastal populations has shown markers that don't match expected migratory patterns, potentially hinting at ancient contact with African peoples. This is still emerging science, but it's lighting a fire under a long-ignored theory. Van Sertima knew he'd face backlash. His work was called pseudo-history by critics, but he didn't back down. He argued that academic gatekeeping has always marginalized African contributions. His mission wasn't just to change facts, object was to change minds. Imagine if this story were taught in schools. Imagine children growing up knowing that African civilizations weren't just part of world history. They were pioneers of it. That changes identity. That changes pride. That changes power. And if you're wondering how Africans crossed the ocean, remember, they had the tech. Mali and Songhai had massive ocean-going ships. These weren't rafts. They were vessels equipped for deep-sea travel. Sailors navigated by stars, currents, and wind patterns, same methods used by Polynesians and Vikings. Van Sertima even pointed to African sailing techniques, like the use of lateen sails, which allowed for windward travel long before Europe adopted them. He also compared ancient American pyramids with Egyptian ones, not just in shape, but in their symbolic functions and alignments. Could it be that these were shared technologies, shared visions? And then there's language. Some pre-Columbian words in Mesoamerican languages closely resemble West African terms for the same objects. Critics say it's coincidence. Van Sertima said it's contact. But here's the real question. Why aren't we allowed to ask these questions? Because if Africans arrived first, they didn't just land. They left a legacy. They contributed to the DNA, the culture, the architecture, the mythology of the Americas. That story flips the narrative of European supremacy. And some folks would rather keep that buried. But history has layers. And every time we dig deeper, we uncover something they tried to hide. So where does that leave us? With a bold new possibility that the roots of global civilization run through Africa in ways we're only beginning to understand. That the so-called Age of Discovery might have just been a rediscovery of what Africans had already done. Van Sertima didn't just present a theory, he opened a door to a past richer, more complex, and far more inclusive than we were ever taught. And here's the kicker. New discoveries are happening every year. Underwater archaeology, satellite scans of ancient ruins, and oral histories passed down for generations. They're all painting a picture that supports what Van Sertima claimed decades ago. So, was he right? The evidence is mounting. The resistance is crumbling. The truth is rising. And if this shook your view of history, if this opened your eyes to a side of the story you never heard before, then don't stop here. Smash that subscribe button. Drop a comment with your thoughts or questions. And make sure you watch our next video. It dives even deeper into Africa's erased legacy across the world. Because the more we uncover, the more we realize. History isn't what happened. History is what we're told happened. And now, we're telling it right. The past has been hidden long enough. It's time to bring it to light.